So first of all, I'm really honored to be here. The work that we're doing around the world at UN Environment, we've recently changed our name, I should say. We have a new executive director, so we're now UN Environment, not UN Environment Program. And a lot of the work we've been doing has been based on the good work of Henrik Lund, Professor Lund, and also all of the team working at Aalborg University and your heat roadmap. So it's a real honor to be here to speak to the people we've learned from to do the work we're doing. So I'm going to do a little bit of a different presentation than I usually do. I think here we have all the experts already on planning, on district energy, heating and cooling, on policy and modeling. So I thought maybe I would start with, and I would refer you to our website to see all the work we've done technically. But I thought I would start by actually asking how many people think that this is what the UN is doing? And probably how many people think that the UN does not have much relevance to what you're doing? Okay, well, no one's putting up their hands, but I get asked this question all the time. So I wanted to say that actually the negotiations are a very small part of what we do. What we do is largely project implementation. And I don't mean going and doing little projects, but helping countries implement policies and build capacity, use tools, do assessments, training, raise awareness, so that they can then unlock or address market barriers and scale up the solutions, the climate solutions, the energy solutions that we're working hard to advance. And so here's an example of one of the projects. It's the Clean Air and Climate Coalition. They're working to reduce short-lived climate pollutants. And they're working with 50 countries to do this. So this is just one example of hundreds of projects that we do. And I wanted to say that it's really about policy and training and capacity building in the countries. The second thing is that, in a way, this might be a bit controversial to say, but you know, Tetsu was just saying, well, we had Fukushima in Japan that created momentum to do something. And actually, what we've seen in our research is that a lot of the time, countries need some kind of big catastrophe to make them really take action, like that kind of leadership that we are asking them to take. And so it's either that, or it's something they see other countries doing, that their friends are doing, that their people that they talk to think is credible and is important to address. We've tried with arguments, with technical arguments. Those help to some extent, but really it's largely seeing a momentum being built among countries taking action on that same topic. So here, again, just because of the example on the last page, this initiative was originally started with Mexico, Canada and the US. Now it's 50 countries working on putting in place policies on short-lived climate pollutants. So that gives you the idea of the potential of what we can achieve together with you also on district energy. When I started working at UNEP on energy, I was actually tasked to do renewable energy and energy efficiency work. I wasn't supposed to do work on district energy. But through research, I kept coming across district energy as a key enabler of renewable energy and energy efficiency in all of the cities that we were looking at. On the other hand, I saw large initiatives being undertaken, Heat Roadmap 2050, you had The Guardian speaking about it, you have all kinds of reports speaking about district energy as this solution. But it was nowhere to be found in any of the UN work. We didn't see it anywhere in the global agenda. We didn't see it at the negotiations. We didn't see it coming up. We had one in particular, which was the Sustainable Energy for All initiative, which is run by the President of the World Bank and the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. UNEP, with the Danish government, co-chairs the segment on energy efficiency because it has 3 different goals: efficiency, renewables, access. And in 2013, they were discussing what sectors could actually help achieve this goal of doubling the rate of energy efficiency improvement by 2030. The importance of this is that the sectors they would identify would be promoted as the key solution to district energy and would receive resources to promote this with other governments around the world, developed and developing countries. So these were the original 4. We had buildings, but more demand-side efficiency, lighting, appliances, and transport. District energy was not on the map. So we worked to do what I guess we always have to do when making the case, and we have to still do now at the country level, and why district energy should be part of this agenda. And the first message we gave was, okay, well, of course, not only do we have rapid urbanization in cities, with over half of our population living in urban cities where all the buildings are. But we also have the buildings accounting for 60%, using 60% of energy for heating, cooling, and hot water. This is largely being met by fossil fuels. Of course, in the climate negotiations, in energy negotiations, in policymakers' worlds, heating and cooling has been ignored for a very long time, and it was time to try to push the message through that this can't be ignored any longer. At the same time, not only is the demand being met by fossil fuels, but you see that it's continuing to grow. So just cooling, for example, between 2001 and 2011, you had from 2000 to 2010, you had a 60% growth in cooling demand worldwide. And that's nothing compared to the growth we're going to see in Latin America and Asia, which is projected to grow by 625% over the next 3-4 decades. So clearly, we need to look at integrated solutions that are going to look at what actually David said yesterday, which is reducing efficiency, improving efficiency, so reducing demand, but also shifting supply to sustainable sources. And that's what district energy can do. So we made the case using all of your work, which is already there. We have a significant amount of references to the work of Aalborg University in everything that we've done, to try to make the case that you have energy efficiency improvements using district energy by connecting the heating and electricity sector. And we made the case that it's not just efficiency, but of course, this is key for renewable energy, but you have to take a systems approach. So we defined district energy similar to what's being defined in the discussions here as heating and cooling networks combined with thermal storage, CHP, decentralized energy sources, heat recovery technologies, heat pumps, in order to actually be able to utilize the local resources in the most efficient way possible. We also made the case that actually, again, this is common to everybody here, but just to say the messages that we gave, was that, okay, by connecting several buildings, you're going to be able to integrate large sources of renewable energy and waste heat that cannot be used otherwise. You can't connect large-scale solar thermal to one building, nor can you use waste heat for one building. So then we also went on to say, and of course we spoke about the case of being able to integrate renewable power with thermal storage and CHP. Then we went on to show what are the benefits. So speaking to different agendas of governments, it's not just the renewable energy integration and balancing and the energy efficiency improvements, but you see that district energy is a solution to multiple agendas that we're trying to tackle globally and nationally. So refrigerant reductions, creating local economies by using local resources, balancing renewables as mentioned, reducing blackouts and shifting peak to reduce grid stress, lowering the cost of cooling, providing, of course, reductions in CO2. So we used a variety of examples from around the world, and I would refer to this to see the various examples to be able to make the case. And then we said, well, of course, they said, well, if this is such a great solution, why has it not yet been taken up? So that's where we said, well, there's the good old barriers that we see with any new solution that comes up. District energy has been proven for many years, in operation for many years. Maybe cooling is a bit more relatively newer, but still it's been decades. And so we spoke to the fact that we need to start some kind of an initiative where we can support governments by addressing the fact that there's all kinds of misperceptions. So district energy is only district heating. It's not also district cooling, or it's not a system approach. That it's only for communist countries, that it's only countries like Russia use it. We see a lot of this kind of misperception among governments, that it's centralized, big, large-scale solution, when in fact, as we know, we can have decentralized district heating networks. The fact that there's a really minimal local capacity to actually bring all the different stakeholders together that are needed to advance such a systems approach. Of course, the fact that there's not much tradition in many countries around the world, well, in the cities of many countries around the world, to do integrated local planning, so integrating energy into infrastructure and land use planning. The regulatory environment, lack of heating and cooling strategies at the national level, a big one, lack of data, which is a really big challenge that we still face, and the fact that many markets around the world haven't even done district cooling or heating for the first time. So we succeeded, And not least with the help of many partners, which I'll show in the next slide, but we did succeed in actually launching the initiative at the Climate Summit in 2014. So here you see Ban Ki-moon launching the initiative, and district energy is one of the 5 solutions as a sector that will help achieve doubling the rate of energy efficiency improvement by 2030. So what does this mean? Aside from the fact that Ban Ki-moon actually knows the word district energy, which I think is a big success in itself, first I want to say it also does something for local policy lobbying. So in countries, when you have such a big high-level sort of support from the UN Secretary General, from the UN environment, it's something you can say to your government, this is what others are doing, this is important, this has been identified as important, so what we have here is all the solutions, now you can listen to us. So we're lending our voice to help accelerate what you're already doing. Second, we're utilizing partnerships and largely with the support also of DANIDA, actually, to the Danish International Development Aid Agency, to support the transfer of best practice knowledge, to take the work you're doing and share it with countries, to be able to raise awareness, to be able to do demonstration projects and build capacity through demonstration projects. It's not so much demonstrating new technology as it is more demonstrating ways of planning, how to actually make assessments, how to assess cooling demand when it's hidden in your electricity bill. So taking cities, holding their hand and taking them through the process of planning, setting targets, identifying zones, putting in place connection policies, etc. Working with the national governments to help them, follow some of the best practice we've seen, for example, in Denmark, with requiring local heat planning, devolving authority, putting in place some kind of pollution taxes or incentives for renewables being used in CHP or waste heat, etc. And then also having cities work with other cities to scale up and replicate this in their country and in neighboring countries. So. Currently, we're working with 7 countries and across 40 cities, and we have at least 36 partners, but it's growing. So one of the first things we did to raise awareness was we launched a technical guide. Again, the point here was to draw the attention of decision makers to district energy. In here, you have 45 cases, very detailed cases on local policy, on what cities can do in their roles as planners, as facilitators of finance, as consumers, as managers of infrastructure, what they can do to create the frameworks for district energy, what national governments can do, what kind of financial mechanisms you can use, and what are the different technology applications. This was done with 45 cities, half of which are in Europe. So again, really, and a lot of reference again to the work being done here in this room. Together with the help of Danfoss and Dalkia, it's been translated now into Chinese, it's been translated into Spanish, it's been translated into French, and it's making its way around with countries and cities through the UN. At the same time, we see that there's been a large momentum being built on the international agenda. So one of the things that's coming up is the urban agenda for cities in Habitat 3, which basically sets the large framework for the cities over the next 20 years. You can see these frameworks a bit like what Euroheat and Power does with the European Commission, in the sense of setting up frameworks with principles that can help you then do what you have to do with district energy. Here we actually have district energy systems in the document. So that took a lot of work, and maybe the implications may not be immediately there, but what it means is that governments, national governments who are there negotiating on this, will see that they need to prioritize this in their work. The second thing we saw was in June, the G20 countries met on energy efficiency, and actually they brought forward district energy as one of the areas that needs to be addressed. So here you have some of the most powerful economies in the world now putting district energy directly on the G20 agenda. You see many organizations like IRENA and others working now on producing reports, looking at global potential for district energy, its role in enabling renewables. So it's created some kind of a momentum in other national, international institutions, organizations, and countries, as you see here. And as a result, we've also seen a number of countries approaching us These are the countries that we're working with. So some of the largest emitters, China and India, Serbia, Morocco, Chile, Bosnia and Herzegovina, to do the work that I mentioned in the earlier slide. I'll take you through some of the examples of the work we're doing in the countries, with the idea that we really need your help to get it right, because we can open the doors, we can create the platforms, we can disseminate what's been done, but we will need your expertise to make it right. And in countries like China and India, who are now showing their interest in doing this, or countries like Chile, who don't have only 4 district energy networks, heating networks from like decades ago, we need to make sure we get it right. And as you all know, it's not an easy task. So one of the first things we did was we see that in Eastern Europe there's a lot of need for investment in rehabilitating the infrastructure, but there's a sort of a real fear in terms of working at all with the private sector. So we did some workshop and training on the various business models that can be done in cities, including business models where the city owns the assets and the private sector is an operator, or all the various models that you have. I mean, multiple, from private ownership to wholly public, and all the PPPs in between. We had all these countries coming to us for support. Of course, we can't work with all of them, but we did start to work with Banja Luka as one of the first countries that we worked with, and here I can give a bit more of an advanced, concrete example of what we've done. So we're only at the beginning of the work we're doing with Banja Luka, but basically what the situation is in Banja Luka and Bosnia and Herzegovina is their network is reliant on crude oil and or heavy fuel oil, and it's extremely inefficient. So you have the equivalent of 50 Olympic swimming pools of water being lost every year. So because of the inefficiency. And at the same time, you have significant air pollution. So 44,000 people die in Bosnia and Herzegovina, so not Banja Luka, but Bosnia and Herzegovina, from air pollution every year, according to the World Health Organization. And the use of heavy fuel oil in the district heating is a contributor to this. So we see that, of course, at the same time, because of the inefficiency, you have significant high prices and because of the oil, you have high prices for district heating, and it becomes actually the most expensive form of heating, which is not good for the case of district heating anywhere. And that links to customer disconnections. So you see over the last 5 years the decline in consumer connections because of the inefficiency, because of the pricing, because of the interruptions in supply. And of course, also the public utility is losing a lot of money. You see it lost less in 2015 because of a decline in oil prices, but it's still significant losses. They're going bankrupt, and they were trying to decide on what do they do. Do they just abandon this infrastructure and go towards decentralized other sources of heating? So we ended up starting with an assessment, had a drone, did an assessment of the leakages, and did a techno-economic assessment of the city's networks, and a priority investment plan, a short-term priority investment plan. And as a result, we've been able to actually identify where we can have new biomass boilers being brought online through rehabilitation of the boilers and rehabilitation of network, and we've been able to leverage some $42 million or euros from the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development to help Banja Luka through this first phase. Of course, we work with the city for 3 years, so it's not just this and go. We will be working to develop a plan and how they can actually rehabilitate their network and shift to renewable sources over the long term, over the next 10 years. But that's an example of some of the work we've done. It's important to say that in Banja Luka, why they asked us for help was because a lot of companies and actually development banks had done assessments for them, and they weren't really feeling that those assessments were accurate, in the sense that they were maybe a lot of the time repeated assessments that had been done and used again and again, and they were promoting additional capacity when what they really needed was to address the losses. So Similarly, Belgrade has now approached, and we're working with Belgrade. It's a similar situation. They have a lot of natural gas. They want to switch their heat sources, improve the utility management and operations. They want to look at different business models. They're not sure which ones would be actually most in line with their city priorities as in their city plan. So they want to have a holistic view of their development, of district energy development, in view of their political strategy. So we will be doing work with them. Looking also at building efficiency together with changing the supply and rehabilitating the network. So China is another country we're working with, and China is really, of course, a massive market. They've grown threefold from 2001 to 2011 in their district heating market. They're one of the largest in the world. But of course, most of it is based on coal and coal boilers. So there's a significant potential. They also have a lot of CHP, the equivalent CHP to boilers, making them the largest market of CHP in the world. So they've been assessed to have enough waste heat in northern China to meet the energy demand of half their buildings. So they have a lot of the right conditions to actually modernize their networks and meet their local pollution targets. But China, what we've understood is that they don't really have strategic energy planning, land use planning at all. And they need really a lot of help with trying to put in place some kind of structured planning to rehabilitate their networks. So as an example, like if you go into a city, and I won't name the city, but the utility doesn't even have their area map for where their pipes are anymore. So we really have a long way to go in China, but a lot of potential. So if we can make the change happen in China, you can imagine what impact that has for us globally in terms of CO2 and coal consumption. So there's the capacity building and city planning. They also really, the national government would like to have a standardized approach similar to Denmark in terms of being able to do cost effectiveness assessments of the different alternatives in the city. So they have no way of making choices on what heat supply is the best, or what heat supply would be the best option. And so we're working with them. Here originally I have mapping waste heat sources and waste heat and integrated energy planning, because originally the focus was very much on waste heat. But actually after discussions with the government and sharing with them all the different options when it comes to district energy, now they would like to look at both district energy using waste heat, but also renewables, depending on what the assessments say. So it's not coming with a technology solution, but it's putting in place planning, assessments, and letting that lead to the right district energy solution for the city. Similarly in India, for India for China the drive is largely air pollution and local economies. In India, actually, they have no district cooling, but they have significant demand for power coming online, largely due to cooling demand. You see 83 gigawatts of additional power capacity is required by 2020. They have commercial demand from electricity is projected to increase by 50%. A lot of that is for air conditioning. And in many cities like Delhi, Bhopal, other cities we've looked at, they are consuming up to 60% of peak for this electricity, for this cooling demand. So we are working in India to actually build awareness of what district cooling can do in India. And we're working with the cities, again, cities like in Mumbai and others, to develop some kind of a planning process, assessment process, and try to demonstrate what benefits cooling can bring. And this is just something I often show in that the India also has all of the right conditions. They have significant smart city plans being put forward, mixed-use areas, new developments, a lot of anchor loads. They're extremely also hot. As you see, the 5 cities we're working with are much hotter than the cities around the world that are doing district cooling. And I know that's not the only element in what determines a good market for district cooling, but just to say there's a lot of potential in India for district cooling, and it's really critical because, as you know, they've been having blackouts, and a lot of those blackouts are due to this extreme stress from the air conditioners on the power grid. And Chile, because I think I've been using up more than my time, I don't know, but I want to say then Chile is the last country I'll mention. In Chile, they're currently developing they've decided they want to develop a district heat roadmap because they have really bad pollution in the south from their wood stoves. And so they would like to promote district heating. But they sent us what they've developed as a district heating roadmap with consultancies they've paid big money for in Chile. And what they've developed is a roadmap that only thinks about district heating using biomass, and that's it. It doesn't at all think about the whole concept of looking at the energy system and how district energy can be integrated into the energy system to optimize resources in Chile. So they have a lot of geothermal, solar, thermal, they have a lot of other potential in addition to biomass use. And never mind that they don't even look at CHP. So, we're really trying to work with them to bring transfer of that knowledge forward in Chile. So we've started to do a preparatory phase. We've put together an advisory team just to give you a feeling for what we actually do. We're doing assessments on the national situation and trying to develop this policy roadmap as a start. And then we're going to put forward a city call for expression of interest so cities apply to the program. We have this in all of the countries we work with. So that is basically an overview of, hopefully I've been able to give you an overview of why some of the work we're doing at the UN has an impact on some of the work you're doing. And also the fact that, all this good work needs to be channeled to these national governments if we're really going to meet our climate and energy ambitions. We will not do it if we just continue to talk to each other. So we need to talk to those that do not know anything about it or who are not paying attention. And we hope to be able to provide one of the platforms to help do that. But we can't do it without your support. So I would hope that we can find different ways to collaborate in terms of being able to maybe have participation of some of you experts in our task forces where we review national policy so that the advice we give has the best expertise reviewing the direction we're giving to countries, having maybe participating in different capacity building workshops. So for example, with the work of State of Green and Danfoss, we brought Belgrade to various cities in Denmark to actually see the different utilities, to see the different projects, meet with the cities. So study tours and exchanges like that are extremely useful for cities. And to be able to maybe adapt some of these very advanced models that you've been developing to not recreate the wheel and actually adapt those to the context in China, in India, in the different countries that we're working with, and to promote your models there. Maybe to we have a roster of experts who can be contacted by cities, who can ask them questions and talk to you about some of their issues, and maybe some of those barriers that are coming up in those countries can be integrated into some of your research that you're undertaking here. I can tell you, I'm sure the ones in China would be very applicable to some of the research being done here because they're very advanced with district energy. I hope that that's inspired you to work with us, and I just would like to say again, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for helping us in helping countries achieve their climate and energy ambitions. Thank you.